Since we're talking about, let's watch Leeja Miller talk about. Let's watch Leeja Miller talk about Curtis Yarvin, the dude people should be fucking pissed off at. Donald Trump's just a big ass orange clown distraction, while billionaire tech bros ready AI to generate them a bunch of feet pictures for them to jerk off to.
And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way.
Obama.
Hi, you're tuned into Why America. My name's Leeja Miller. Let's get started. To understand the widespread chaos so far in the Trump administration, you need to know about the names, faces, and ideologies of the people behind the scenes pulling the strings. So today, I'm going to try to when
I was saying that at the beginning, that they have that TikTok thing going on where they're saying, like, somebody needs to do it. You know, somebody needs to do it. They're saying that shit over and over again. The thing that, like, people aren't understanding is that it's not Trump that's dangerous. It's the ideology that's dangerous. So no matter what happens with Trump, if Trump has a Big Mac-induced heart attack next week, if Donald Trump contracts Ebola in his dick next week, dies in the most horrific way possible, that is not going to change much. Like, not as much as people think, right? They think everything's gonna be good. Like, oh, that's it. Like, we won. No, you didn't. He's just a symptom of the disease. He's not the disease, man. He's just a symptom. People give that motherfucker way too much credit. You know, like, he's just a symptom of a much bigger problem in not just America. Well, it does seem as though it's mostly just America, actually. The other countries seem to be voting for the other shit. So I keep saying not just America, but I think it might just be America, actually. But he's just a symptom, right? If J.D. Vance becomes the president, he's actually scarier than Donald Trump is, because J.D. Vance can put a fucking smile on and say shit and get people to agree with him in a much different way, much more important people. Once they don't need the blue-collar people anymore, Donald Trump said it, I don't need your vote no more. Just vote for me this time. I won't ever need your vote again. He knew what he was fucking talking about. You know who needs that vote now? J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is going to speak to the right people. He's going to speak to conservatives that are like, woo, at least he's not Donald Trump anymore. Like, that dude is way more dangerous. Stephen Miller, dangerous. Homan, dangerous. Curtis Yarvin, dangerous. Mark Andreessen, dangerous. All of these people are much more dangerous because when you put the gun in their hand, they know how to shoot it and they know who they're shooting at. When you put it in Donald Trump's hand, he just fucking, what was it? Yosemite Sam. He's just Yosemite Sam out there. Fucking, when people get taken out, it ain't because he wanted it to happen, but it's not because he meant to do it, okay?
Untangle the dark web of ideologies
Miller,
driving this administration that go
Miller.
way beyond the top-level analysis. It's one thing to look at Doge as a means to save money while handing billionaires some tax cuts, or at Project 2025 as a backlash to progressive ideals, but there is a deeper ideology animating some of the actors that are pulling the strings behind Trump and
Leeja,
see him as a
up.
convenient CEO figurehead to push through their biggest ideological initiatives.
That's funny.
And understanding the underlying theories and beliefs makes everything that's happening much clearer and can help paint a picture for the direction we're headed. Now, before we dive in, let me please preface this by saying that I am in no way insinuating that there's some giant underground cabal of anyone.
Okay, Leeja. See, this is what I'm saying. This is why nobody on the left will approach this shit. Everybody's worried about it being called a conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory if the motherfuckers straight up write books about the shit. I mean, like I said, you don't have to be the fucking chemtrail person or the fucking, vaccines have robots in them person. Those people are like fucking doing the Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme. Like fucking this plus this. If you bring the dots together and there's a speech that happened at the same time as syphilis became prevalent in the black American society. You know, like, that's what those people are doing. Nah, this ain't a conspiracy theory, dog. They wrote books. Donald Trump said he's going to establish freedom cities. Look, motherfuckers, if they put freedom on the front of anything, it has nothing to do with freedom. Just a fucking quick fucking piece of advice to you guys. If it's called freedom something, it probably does not involve freedom. Oh, Jesus.
And let me please preface that underlying theories and beliefs makes everything that's happening much clearer and can help paint a picture for the direction we're headed. Now, before we dive in, let me please preface this by saying that I am in no way insinuating that there's some giant underground cabal of anyone making master plans to take over the United States and then the world. I think there is scheming happening for sure. I mean, Project 2025 was a major undertaking that brought together literally hundreds of people and organizations, but I'm not here to sow giant underground conspiracy theories. I think what's
It's not underground, Leeja. It ain't underground, Leeja. See, like I said, this is a problem with the left right here. Okay, I don't want to look crazy, so I'm just going to go ahead and make sure everybody knows that I'm not saying that this is actually happening. I'm saying that it could. Yeah, the hope is that fucking democracy wins out and the crazy motherfuckers don't get to turn us into a bunch of fiefdoms around the country. I don't know who's going to be in charge of my fiefdom. Is Gavin Newsom going to be in charge of my fiefdom? Is it going to be Elon Musk? I don't know. Actually, I'm kind of down with the fiefdom thing because, you know, if that shit happens, I'm going to get me a horse and a suit of armor. I already got swords. Fuck it, let's go.
What's going on is the result of a lot of disparate actors who happened to know each other and to be influenced by the fringe thoughts of a few guys with blogs, and they now have the ear of the president and the power to experiment with those ideas. Okay, first, let's break down the theories and the people we're talking about to get a lay of the land. These people and theories have been reported on variously over the last few years, but I still think it's not well enough known. I learned a lot in diving into the research for this episode, so hopefully you will too. Elon Musk is absolutely...
I am the king in my house. You know the funny thing about what you just said, Troy, is that don't look crazy, stop saying the 2024 election was stolen, is that would be me, right? Like, I'm on the other side of that, where I'm like, don't say it was stolen, because I don't like the terminology. And it's a semantic problem with me, right? It's a semantic issue. Is that I think that Republicans took the 4 years that Joe Biden was in office to put in place things like what almost happened in North Carolina with that judge who was duly elected almost not getting the position because they were using things that they had set up, right? So I actually believe that it's closer to conspiracy to claim that it was stolen, but if you use the right terminology, if you say that the way that Republicans use legislation to keep from people from being able to vote or to inhibit people from voting. I guess that's redundant. It's the same thing. Led to Donald Trump being elected. That's more my style. That's more my style. So just to give you a point of me being a hypocrite sometimes, as often happens with everybody, there's one for you.
Tied up in the ideologies underpinning the second Trump administration. And in a bit of a foreshadowing of what we're going to talk about today,
manipulate.
I saw
That's
this
a good
headline
word
from
too,
the publication
I like
Futurism that says, Elon Musk's credibility sinking as he's caught in web of lies. And it's helpful to see in the Ground News browser extension that this publication leans left. So to get a fuller picture of the story, I can click on full coverage. On the Ground News website, I can see that 181 sources are covering this topic. As with
Nah, I don't agree with you, Troy, because even with Trump really wants to say... So this is why Trump says that the election was stolen. Because people around him pointed out how certain things got used so that way he lost, right? Like, people around him were like, Democrats are much more likely to mail-in vote. So during COVID... if we wouldn't allowed as many people to vote, because most of those people are older and immunocompromised, that you should have won, sir. And Donald Trump hears that and says to himself, wow, they fucking cheated. They stole that shit from me. And the people around him encourage him to say those words. They cheated and they stole him. And then the people that follow him prefer those words. They like hearing it was stolen. They like hearing that he was cheated because they don't like logic. They don't want to hear that the reason that he lost was potentially because if we wouldn't allow people to mail and vote, if we wouldn't allow all these older immunocompromised people to go to send in their votes, they don't like to think through that situation and come to a conclusion. They want to be told just straight out, blunt as fucking possible, this shit was stolen, I was cheated. So the reason I don't agree with what you're saying is just because I just don't like the fact that people are being manipulated by a con man that either doesn't know that he's doing this, which I think would be bullshit, or does know, and that makes him a really fucking shitty person. Like that's where I disagree.
These ideas we're talking about today and Elon Musk himself, coverage of these types of stories is going to
Biden
vary wildly depending on the bias of the publication you're reading. For example, left-leaning HuffPost uses the headline, Musk wants to harm OpenAI because he can't stand its success without him. Lawsuit. While
See, that's what I'm saying, Troy. You're Trump supporting it up right now, brother. You're saying Biden got all that votes for real, Biden. Just because you don't think it's possible doesn't mean it isn't possible. Joe Biden appealed to Americans for multitudes of reasons. Joe Biden fucking did well against Donald Trump in those debates in 2020. He actually did very well in those debates. And more importantly was that he came off as just a sane and logical person during a time we were entering a pandemic. People wanted a more logical leader. I've said this before. I've claimed that Donald Trump, people voted for Trump because they wanted to shake up the system. They wanted to drain the swamp. They wanted somebody different, somebody new, somebody that lied to him, told him that he wasn't a politician. And so they voted for Trump. Now in Trump, what they got was a crazy ex-girlfriend. They got a crazy girlfriend that fucking burned down your house, keyed your car, and stole your cat. Probably burned down your cat too. And then what happened in 2020 is that old girl that you had been with that was nice to you, that your mom liked, came along and was like, I was hoping to hook back up. And you were like, you know what? I am tired of crazy ass Nancy. Okay? Actually, let's hang out. And then for 4 fucking years, they got the treatment of being with a nice, solid, responsible woman. And they thought to themselves, you know, I might get syphilis, but let's give it one more shot. And now we're back with the crazy ex-girlfriend. So when you say, Joe Biden got all those votes, that's Trump-tardation. The idea that something can't possibly happen. Why? Because in my head, I've decided, no, it's not possible. That there's a lot of shit in life that I think isn't possible, that I've watched happen, and I went, well, guess that was fucking possible. I thought for sure people couldn't be stupid enough to vote for Trump again in 2024. I went, looks like it's possible.
Right-leaning the Epoch
Like I said,
Times uses the headline, OpenAI countersues Musk over alleged.
Troy, how many people do you think chose not to vote for Kamala Harris over the Israel-Palestine conflict? How many Muslim Americans do you think there are in Pennsylvania and Michigan? I literally called that shit before it happened. I was telling people on this channel, if Detroit votes red, I will never say another good thing about Cecil Fielder or Barry Sanders ever again in my life. And that's hurtful for me because I love those men. That's what I'm saying is you try to boil it down into this reductionism that just drives me fucking nuts. And that's why I don't like debating with people, is because there are multitudes of ways that it can be explained why there was a difference between how many votes Biden got and how many votes Kamala Harris got. It's a completely different fucking reality. You going into a pandemic with a fucking nuts dude that clearly was doing some dumb shit at the time that benefited Biden. And Biden came out of his presidency having skimmed across the surface of a recession, leading an economy that was good for wealthy people, for upper middle class people, but bad for lower middle class people during a war that was, in most people's opinions, in those states, morally unjustified. This idea is like, you can't explain how she had way less votes than Biden. I'm sorry, dog, but that's tarded. But it's okay. Don't worry, all right?
My first wife was targeted. She's a pilot now.
It's okay. You still have a future, Troy.
Alleged harassment. Depending on where you get your news, you're going to get very different
What up,
takes on
Gnome?
the same story. And if you only pay attention to one side or the other, you might miss the full picture. This is where Ground News comes in and why I've been using them for over a year.
Oh,
Today's
shit.
partner, Ground News, is an app and website that offers tools to help you critically analyze the
I was
news
like,
you
why
read,
am I listening to a
providing
commercial?
context to understand the full picture. By using proportionally covering the story. Listen, I'm not the only one who loves Ground News, the Nobel Peace Center view, and more. Subscribe through this access just mentioned. It means to be disenchanted with theory, dark enlightenment, to all of the features that I just mentioned. Thanks, Ground News. First theory, dark enlightenment. To be enlightened, but make it dark. It means to be disenchanted with everything.
Actually, I think she's wrong about that. She, when I read about the Dark Enlightenment, now maybe she probably knows more about the subject than I do, but as I understood it, it was that we want to get away from the ideals of the Enlightenment. And by the way, just so you guys know, okay, I do know a little something, okay, a little something about the Enlightenment period, as Steven Pinker likes to talk about it in his book, Enlightenment Now. But I thought that the idea of the Dark Enlightenment was to get away from the ideas of the Enlightenment, back to rationalization, back to logical thought, going away from those things. Because the Enlightenment in 1800 was considered the time when we embraced science, when we decided that, gay people having sex wasn't what created tornadoes. I thought that the Dark Enlightenment was pushing back to a time of ignorance for like middle class and lower middle class people, and keeping the enlightenment values in the for the wealthy. That's what I thought it was, but maybe I'm wrong.
Basically, to trust and to be in love with the features that I just mentioned. Thanks, Ground News. First theory, dark enlightenment. To be enlightened, but make it dark. It means to be disenchanted with everything. Basically, to trust and believe in nothing, especially when it comes to truth and information, but also philosophy and government. To be red-pilled, to have had the wool of progressive propaganda pulled from your eyes, so you're above the masses and able to see the world for what it really is. You're
Okay, I hear. Okay, she's probably right. I'm
no
wrong,
longer
yeah.
a sheep
I should
following
listen
the elite,
longer.
the intellectuals, the mainstream media, and going along with everything that they say. Neo-reactionary, shortened to NRX, is described variably as the same as Dark Enlightenment, part of the same movement, distinct from it. It's a little unclear. In any event, they're related. NRX criticizes traditional Enlightenment thinking about equality and democracy. Instead, equality and democracy are sowing chaos and making government incredibly inefficient. Liberal democracy is a failed experiment, and equality should not be the desired outcome because it doesn't actually make people's lives better, according to this theory. Prosperity, order, and freedom aren't achieved through individual rights, but through a government able to manage the country efficiently without things like pesky little civil liberties getting in the way. Democracy is a played-out experiment that has proven itself to be very weak. Everyone can agree that politics are bad and populism is bad because decisions should actually be made by experts, which is really a class of people worthy of leading. And so really, aristocracy should be the answer.
Aristocracy.
A country run by people who have been groomed to be great leaders and experts, not subject to the whim of the unwashed masses. Americans are simply too afraid of the word dictator and should in fact be more open-minded that maybe
Yeah, that's Curtis Yarvin. So, and here's the thing, and this is something I think is really important for everybody to think about while when they're listening to a person talk about this. You're gonna have times where you're like, I actually agree with this, or I actually agree with that. That's what makes people like Curtis Yarvin so dangerous, is that if you listen to these interviews that Yarvin does, other than the New York Times one, that one was actually that dude pushed back pretty fucking hard. But these interviews he has a really good way of being like, oh, these are just ideas. They're just ideas. I'm just saying. Everybody thinks that I'm some type of villain. To be honest with you, I could care less what happens. Either we do it or we don't do it. That's like kind of his attitude. And that kind of drags people into this conversation of whether or not they're overreacting or not. And sometimes with these interviewers, they'll push back on him and he'll like make it out to be like they're overreacting. And by the end of the interview, they'll kind of be like, well, you know, you have a lot of good ideas. And I think some of your ideas aren't that great. But, you know, hey, this is the world we live in where everybody should have their opinions. I do believe in a form of aristocracy. Because I do believe that oftentimes decisions are made by the populace that are against their own interests that potentially would not be made in that manner if we had a better system of voting. I think that that's a slippery slope, and therefore I don't embrace those ideas because I think that it's better for us to get things wrong and still have the right to vote for everybody than it is to only allow certain people with certain expertise to vote on certain subjects. I think that somewhere in there's got to be a balance, some type of, some kind of decision that's made by people for people and what they think. Like, I mean, that's the idea of having a representative, right? But the representative class has gotten kind of very corrupted by big money. So the idea of our representative democracy that we have is that we say to a person, you embrace the same values as I do, therefore you get to vote on the things that I think are important, and those decisions are made, right? And that's actually a pretty good system, except for we always come back to the same problem in every one of these conversations, and that is that money is always going to be at the root of everything that is wrong with our society. Everything. And if we can't have representatives that, are paid well, have health insurance, everybody should have health insurance. Fuck, just representative. Everybody, right? If we can't have a system where these people aren't influenced by big money lobbyists, then we're never going to have real democracy. And I don't mean pure democracy or direct democracy. I mean democracy where your values are represented by the people that you elect. Because money is always going to be more important to the politician than your opinion is of them, because we vote based off D's and R's. So that's how you can have somebody like Lauren Boebert, who clearly does not represent Republican conservative values, at least not by the word, how they explain them, yet continues to get elected, right? Like, this is an issue, like I said, that I will agree with to some part. So I just want to point that out to people, that there's going to be things that when you hear some of this dark enlightenment shit, when you hear some of Curtis Yarvin's stuff, it's a little conflicting, because you'll hear stuff that you go, well, yeah, I agree with that actually. So, but you have to understand what the end goal is of that rhetoric and what they're trying to establish. And once again, that is nothing that is good for you, and it is everything that is good for them.
Maybe they'd like living under a dictatorship. But this isn't your average feudal monarchical system of old. This new form of aristocracy or monarchy or whatever you want to call it should also include running the country like a startup. And so limits to the executive's ability to run the country like a CEO would are actually bad, because it means the government doesn't work as well as it could. The reason the government doesn't work well is because of all these intellectuals and bureaucrats who've bought into the progressive bubble, getting in the way of someone who really knows what he's doing, who can take over and run the place. I mean, if Apple ran California, it would work better for people, because look at all the great products they make. Companies are really just little tiny monarchies if you really think about it, and we're surrounded by amazing stuff made by these amazing little monarchies. I mean, imagine if the government made your laptop. the horror. In fact, the expansion of democracy through things like abolishing slavery and giving everyone the right to vote hasn't really benefited people much. I mean, so many formerly enslaved people suffered when they were set free after the Civil War.
Oh,
the
Jesus.
ladies in Jane Austen novels seemed
I
like they were
hate
having a
those
great time.
arguments.
The
Like I said,
government would
that's the shit
simply
that drives
work
me
better for
nuts.
everyone if we had a CEO running things. Neo-reactionary thinking involves cherry-picking history and facts, whitewashing reality, ignoring the fact that most startups fail, and blindly accepting that capitalist progress is the thing that should be valued above all else, all while calling your...
Yeah, and one thing that people have to be aware of is that when they talk about splitting, because they talk about the president just being a figurehead, right? Like being a monarch. So he's a king and he gets to make certain decisions, but for the most part, those decisions don't influence the nobles that run the rest of the fiefdoms, right? So if Peter Thiel is in charge of California and Donald Trump is the king of America, it sounds so fucking dumb to say, then he can make certain decisions, but Peter Thiel is actually the person running California. So there would be no regulations. When they talk about these forever cities, or California Forever, or Prospera in Honduras, what they're talking about is no regulation through the FDA, no regulation through OSHA, no regulations through the energy department. So think about this. I'm pro-nuclear. I am a pro-nuclear person. I believe that nuclear can be done in this day and age with the technology we have and be safer and better for the planet than most of the other things we have. Although green energy is amazing, I think nuclear is the answer. So think about it this way. If they said, with government regulations, we want to put in new nuclear power plants, I'd be like, wow, that sounds great. That's good for California. Now, take away the word regulations and say Peter Thiel now wants to put nuclear facilities all throughout California. He wants to put them in your little town that you live in, right next to the source of water that you drink and use for your children's health. That's fucking scary. As I've said before, sure, is there sometimes too much red tape, specifically for like small businesses, middle-class Americans trying to get houses built? 100%. There's too many regulations on normal people and not enough regulations on fucking ultra-wealthy people. If we were to start allowing these billionaires to do whatever the fuck they want, can you imagine Elon Musk, who literally blows up fucking rockets in the sky and thinks it's fun, putting down nuclear facilities in the state that you live in? Just like all over the fucking place. No thank you. I'll pass.
Yourself enlightened. And then there's accelerationism, the idea that Western democracy is irreparably corrupt. Participating within the system through things like voting
What's up,
and mass
Squishmallow?
politics is
What's
pointless.
happening? What's up,
and
Dr.
the best
Don?
way to more quickly move away from these corrupt, inefficient
Exactly,
governmental
Doctor.
models to accelerate their demise is by creating chaos and political tension as much as possible until it all comes crumbling down. At which point, the rich, white, smart Christians will come out on top, as they are preordained to do. So don't bother voting, but if you do vote, vote for the most extreme candidate, the one that will bring it all down faster. But really, violence is the ultimate answer. Accelerationist ideals are frequently cited by especially white nationalist mass shooters and terrorists as the source of their ideology and the reasoning behind their violence.
And accelerationism is scary because, so when people talk about, like, what do you do right now? Is an armed revolution on the table? Well, that plays into the hands of accelerationism, right? There are definitely times right now in this administration that I feel as though people are being set up. That if you fall for the bait and do the thing, what just happened with that Free Palestine kid in fucking New Jersey, right? First of all, that's a goddamn tragedy. Those people you ain't fighting. You want to fight a war, then go over to fucking Gaza and join up, dog. Taking out people at the, what is it, Museum of Jewish History or whatever. Like, that shit ain't right. But that person played right into the hands of the conservative right. He played right into the hands of the very people that want to make his side look like savages, look like they're crazy. And he's giving people like Donald Trump the right to be able to create legislation or laws that are going to affect other people that potentially weren't doing what he did, but wanted to be helpful to that cause. And I do think that when we talk about accelerationism, that we're between a rock and a hard place, because these people do want, in my opinion, to rip the Band-Aid off, get the government burnt to the fucking ground, and then start rebuilding shit in the manner that they want to do it. And so everybody has to be very careful about still being logically thinking human beings that don't allow your own emotions and passions to be used against you, so that way they can then take those instances and, for instance, put in place martial law, because that's going to make things a lot harder. But accelerationism is a really scary part of this. It's just like they may feel that climate change is real. If they want to participate in accelerationism when it comes to climate change and they think it's real, then they might think the best thing to do in this world is to push through a really bad time in the planet's history, get it over with, so that way they can come out the other side. They have all the money, they have all the resources, they have a $21 trillion bunker under the earth. I swear to God. That's one conspiracy I am so deep on. But you know what I'm saying? Like, accelerationism is probably one of the most scary parts of all this. And it's who was it? It was some group that was trying to start a race war. I mean, I know the Mansons did that, but just recently, some group was trying to start a race war. That's accelerationism. That's that they believe that eventually it's going to end in a race war, and so they're trying to jumpstart it by doing shit that would come off as that.
Reactionism grew out of early accelerationism. As Vox describes the belief, quote, egalitarian and democratic policies described as progressive by left liberals are in fact a way of slowing down the only progress worth having, acceleration toward techno-capitalist singularity. Neo-reaction is a version of accelerationism adapted to address this problem. So with each of these intertwined ideologies, dark enlightenment, neo-reactionism, and accelerationism, the underlying through line is anti-democratic, anti-egalitarian, and in favor of technological advancement above all else, wherein the individual matters less than the overall progress towards financial growth spurred on by technological advancement. Voting rights and DEI and wokeism and bureaucrats following rules get in the way of progress when the central idea of progress revolves around how to use computers to make as much money as possible. And so having a single autocratic ruler who is a genius and doesn't have to abide by the sticky, slow norms required by democracy is better for everyone, because in this world everyone benefits from this techno progress. If a few individuals,
once again, just to be clear, they're not talking about Trump being the leader, they're talking about individual leaders of each state or territory. Trump, we've read that a million times, where it says in Curtis Yarvin's Butterfly Revolution on his Gray Mirror Substack that Trump would just be a figurehead, somebody that makes speeches, keeps the populace in line by going to events and telling shitty jokes about people. Meanwhile, the country would be ran by the CEOs that run their fiefdoms, pretty much.
Meaning 99% of the population, have to, have zero say in the functioning of their society, experience daily racism or sexism, and live in constant fear of an autocratic government that doesn't allow dissent, and enjoy zero of the riches that their daily labor creates, so be it. It's for the good of mankind. And some of the more important quote-unquote philosophers of these ideologies have largely flown under the radar until recently. Those names include Nick Land, a former professor of philosophy from England who is seen as the originator of the modern right-wing accelerationist philosophy. He was originally associated with the University of Warwick, but when his philosophy started really flying off the hinges, he and his associated group of faculty members, known as the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, or CCRU, split from the university in 1998 and moved into, a house formerly owned by a prominent British Satanist, where the group took copious amounts of amphetamines and scribbled diagrams all over the walls. In his own book, Nick Land admits that, quote, after perhaps a year of fanatical abuse of amphetamines, I was, by any reasonable standard, profoundly insane.
Don't worry, guys. This is the guy you guys should totally follow. 100%, man. This guy has great ideas. Holy shit, we're in so much trouble.
I love the poorly educated.
But yeah, go off, King. After his self-described mental breakdown,
King.
Land moved to China, where he worked as a journalist and deeply admired the Chinese regime's accomplishments and leaders. By the 2010s, he had made contact and began working with the purported godfather of dark enlightenment and neo-reactionism,
Curtis Yarvin.
Curtis Yarvin.
Bam!
Yarvin is a 50-something blogger who makes his living mostly from spewing academic-sounding blather on his Substack. He hates elites and intellectuals while also declaring himself an intellectual. He went to Brown University for undergrad, graduating in 1992, and then got a year and a half into a computer science PhD program at Berkeley before dropping out to work for a tech company. He went on to found a computer platform called Urbit in 2002, and getting embedded into the early Silicon Valley libertarian tech community seemed to really radicalize the young Curtis. He began blogging in 2007, pontificating on his dark Enlightenment neo-reactionary theories to a fringe audience. In 2013, he expanded the work of his company Urbit through a company he co-founded thanks to venture capital funding from none other than
Peter Thiel. Bam!
With whom
I'm a
he
winner.
reportedly watched the 2016 election results roll in, and whom he has described as fully enlightened. Peter Thiel is also the tech billionaire who helped fund ventures J.D. Vance was involved with before throwing his hat in the political ring. J.D. Vance has cited to Yarvin approvingly on various podcast appearances. Peter Thiel is also closely connected to Elon Musk, with whom he worked on PayPal in the early 2000s.
Yep, PayPal Mafia.
And of course, the Silicon Valley billionaires love Yarvin because his argument is democracy is weak, and that's why there are unpopular policies like mass immigration, for example, that persist despite people not liking them. And then he turns the blame for the ills of society on democracy and says, actually, if we have a few powerful people take over, then everything would be better.
Yep.
As opposed to the reality, which is that incredibly unpopular
They don't want you to have a voice.
persist because our current democracy is overrun by moneyed interests. And so our elected officials aren't answerable to us. They're answerable to the 1%. And this has been studied. In Yarvin's camp, the answer to this corruption isn't to try to move more towards democratic ideals by, banning billionaires from government, but instead to do away with democracy altogether. And so Curtis Yarvin, through his learned mannerisms and ability to make the asinine sound profound by calling him...
There you go. See that? She hit it on the head. Good job, Leeja. This is why I love Leeja, man. What she just said is what I just said earlier. Is like, you listen. Go ahead. Go listen to some Curtis Yarvin. Can you go take a listen to Curtis Yarvin in an interview? This one right here. He talks in a way that makes it sound like none of these things I'm saying right now are very crazy. And in fact, he'll tell you, I was a very progressive person. I actually have a lot of democratic ideals. And he'll say a couple things that you're like, you know what? Actually, I agree with that. And that's what's missing from our society now, is this ability. I've said it before, like people get mad when I say Trump said something funny. Or people get mad if I say Elon said something funny or did something funny because they're like, fuck that. Nothing this person ever does is ever funny. And it's like, well, hold on. I didn't say he was a good person. I didn't say he was a great leader. I just said one thing the person said in their entire life made me giggle. I still think they're shitty people. I still think they're bad human beings. But I'm not going to deny that something that they said was funny because that's not logical. You're not critically thinking. You're thinking with your emotions. So the reason I say that is because the opposite is also true. When you're listening to somebody and they're talking like this and they're doing a good job of, keeping their tone in this area of, I'm just asking questions. I'm just making my opinion known to you guys about what I think is right. That sometimes that tone don't match the shit that he's saying. And when you hear the things he say, you should take them and you should remove all the bullshit from around them and ask yourself what is at the core of what this person is thinking and what is the goal, what's the end game. And the end game, when you figure it out, is fucking scary for everybody but the wealthiest people. Very scary. Yeah, I see you asking for a link there, Squishmallow. I'm telling you, I might be right, I might be wrong, but I think a decade from now, y'all are going to be talking about this, and you're going to forget that I said anything about this shit. This is Leeja Miller, and what she's talking about right now is cyber libertarianism, techno feudalism. You could call it a bunch of different things, but it's an idea of the dark enlightenment. And yeah, it's in my opinion, this is what's happening right now. This is what they're trying to do. I feel like I said, I think that Donald Trump is playing this game like he's a poker player with all the chips on the table, and he has pushed his entire hand into the pot. It feels like right now what is going on is that America recognized that the rest of the world was getting ahead of them in this race for AI, in this race for green energy, and decided that they have to take one last gasp effort at being the person in the driver's seat when it comes to AI. And that's why I think you're seeing all of this chaoticness and craziness right now, is because I genuinely believe that they think, fuck it. If the place burns down and we don't win, then I don't care. And if the place burns down and we win, then great. And if the place doesn't burn down and we win, well, that'd be fine too. But I feel like they will know right now that they might be burning this country to the ground, and they don't care because they think this is their last gasp effort at being the country ahead of everybody else to turn the rest of the world into vassals. That's really what I believe.
Himself an intellectual, using words like opprobrious and speaking in a condescending tone, is able to make it seem like the billionaires killing all of us are actually here to save us, and we're all stupid idiots who fell for the progressive lies being fed to us by society. We're in the cult. He's the red-pilled enlightened prophet here to save all of those who will listen.
Maybe I'm not seeing
This
it.
is a computer nerd who took the idea of playing devil's
Curtis
advocate
Yarvin.
way too far, and who's also stumbled on the right words.
Who is it that's asking? Here, let me go over there. Here, I'll open Twitch because I think I don't get all the Twitch comments. Let me do this real quick. I don't think I get all the Twitch comments. Restream's doing a bad job. Oh no, what is going? Don't do that. What is that? What is going? Don't do that. Can I pop this out? No. Here we go. Let's see. Oh god, this is like overwhelming. I need to just turn off the restream bot so I don't have to see that shit. Yeah, I don't see anybody even over here asking a question. Am I missing something? Did I miss something? Oh, you said that just in case. Okay. Trolling me. Trolling me. Now I'm watching my own stream on Twitch. Alright, here you go.
To say to get powerful people to listen to him. And in this day and age, if you have someone who understands tech or computers, we then love to impute a greater genius or higher understanding onto them, despite the fact that they haven't earned it. Just because a white guy founded a tech company does not mean he's smarter than the average person. Let me say that again. Just because a white guy founded a tech company does not mean he's smarter than the average person. And this is also why white nationalists love Yarvin and the neo-reactionary philosophy. It gives them a convenient excuse, cloaked in pseudo-intellectualism, for why they shouldn't have to bother themselves with equality, and why actually their racism and misogyny is good, because those democratic values just get in the way of true progress. It makes them feel enlightened.
And just so you know, too, one of the things they believe is they believe racism is okay. They believe that we're making a mistake, that we should allow all the racists to live in their own society if they choose to, and that we should just live next door to them. Like, this is like a hyper libertarian idealism. Is that somebody asked me, they said, well, don't you think they'll clash with the Project 2025 people? And I said, maybe at one point, but right now they have the same ideas, right? Because the 2025 people want a section of the country, if they want the whole country, but they would be willing to accept, to start with, a section of the country where their ideals, their laws, their traditions are theirs, right? And what they want is just to get their foot through the door. So at the beginning of all this, if the cyber libertarians, the Peter Thiels of the world, the Curtis Yarvins of the world, and the Stephen Votts of the world, the Project 2025 people, come to an agreement that these enclaves of people can exist and each person can be in charge of their own well-being, then what you're going to end up with is you're going to have Handmaid's Tale in this corner, you're going to have Idiocracy in this corner, you're going to have Elysium in this corner, you're going to have all, and then you're going to have fucking American History X in this corner, right? And eventually that's going to lead to some type of intercontinental wars, because obviously once they get their foot through the door, they want to kick that fucking thing open. So, yeah, right now they're going to get along. But in the future, eventually it won't, right?
Philosophical, above it all, after decades of being made to feel ashamed for being raging bigots. It assures them there is a natural order to things, and they are at the top of that order. And I wanted to talk about this today because I think it's important to understand this underlying philosophy, to call it what it is, to put names and faces to the people pulling the philosophical strings behind the madness.
Vicky,
but also
100%.
because I think it's important to talk about this stuff in light of what is currently a waning democracy that is the United States. I talked about this last week, but it is very easy, I do it too, to look backwards to try to figure out where we're going. These are all the ways Trump is like Hitler. Here's how Hitler did it. Let's look into that to learn from history so we can try and
Oh, Leeja, are we about to be best friends for life for real? Leeja, are we about to be best friends for life for real, Leeja? God, tell me. Come on, Leeja, say that it's about looking forward. Come on, Leeja. Come on. Because I'm telling you guys, like, I hear all you guys' I understand the criticisms of who Donald Trump is as a human being. But I think what we're dealing with is something that is much different than what we've experienced in the past. Come on, Leeja. Be the one person that fucking agrees with me, Leeja. Come on. I don't want to feel alone no more.
Predict what Trump is going to do next. But 2025 is not the same as 1935. And much like the Industrial Revolution of the 100 years leading up to the 20th century fundamentally changed the order of society, so too has the advent of the internet in the 50 years leading up to this present moment. The accumulation of wealth that the internet has fast-tracked, either directly or indirectly, spurred on by governments that were fumbling to pass regulations quickly enough to keep up and have largely failed, and now the computing power that has been and continues to be created by AI, another computing revolution that governments have no idea how to handle, is entirely new in the history of the world. Technological advancements have shaped the world over and over throughout history, from the printing press to the steam engine, but the internet has accelerated how quickly innovations can change all of us, and AI is the latest advancement that I do not think
Why do I feel like Leeja is about to sell me like some internet services?
it's an overstatement to say is a full
I feel like I'm being sold a VPN right now.
on technological revolution with the power to shape our global systems, our societies, our governments, and more. There was the initial wave of discovering that ChatGPT can write your homework for you, which has died down as we've all discovered that it's actually not that good at that. And also it uses unconscionable amounts of energy to operate. But that was truly just the start. And AI's potential beyond individual user inputs.
By the way, that's why they want freedoms from regulations. So to create these AI centers, they need like personal nuclear reactors, right? Like these little small ones. They're small, like they're the size of houses or bigger, but they're small compared to the big ones, right? So they want the loosening of regulations on this shit because they need to put those like right next door to any AI data center that they're going to create. Like the one that's going to happen over in Saudi Arabia, that one might have multiple nuclear reactors around it. And that's why this whole America First bullshit is a complete fucking lie. is because they know this. It's just literally they're taking advantage of Americans' patriotism, their poor education. That's what they're taking advantage of.
I love the poorly educated.
Because they know that the reality is that they need to be able to participate with these other countries, because these other countries like Saudi Arabia don't have the regulations that America has. This is a tale as old as time. This is what we've been doing forever. And so when you have something like needing to put the nuclear reactors into these areas, you need less regulations. So that way, if like no one will sell you their land in a place where there aren't people, and the only place you can buy land is where there are people, or it just makes more sense to have it there. It's more profitable to have it there. Then they're going to want to put a nuclear reactor like right next door to your mom's house. She's going to grow a third arm, probably a fourth eye. She's probably already got 3 already. Just saying. Your mom's ugly. Oh, sorry. I digress. These people are going to continue to work with the rest of the world and make deals with the rest of the world. Meanwhile, they're going to tell you that you're supposed to hate the rest of the world and you're supposed to be scared of the rest of the world. Because in this equation, you are the patsy. You are the person being conned. They're not going to stop working with Saudi Arabia. It's not going to be American first. It's techno oligarch first.
Is only just beginning to be unpacked. And AI is very central to this discussion about dark enlightenment and neo-reactionism because it is truly the pinnacle of techno-capitalism and has been floated as a potential tool for future governing. Not to be used by future governments, but instead to take the place of governments. ChatGPT's parent company OpenAI was co-founded by Elon Musk and now CEO Sam Altman. Altman has been increasingly friendly with Trump, just this last week appearing at an event with Saudi officials.
Look at this
during
goofy
Trump's Middle East
motherfucker.
trip.
Holy shit.
Despite origins that indicated a dedication to transparency and safety in their development of AI, Sam Altman has increasingly pushed OpenAI towards faster and faster product launches, foregoing safety for quote-unquote progress, according to reporting in The Atlantic, based off the forthcoming book, Empire of AI by Karen Howe, which is absolutely now on my reading list. The article in The Atlantic quotes Bloomberg saying that research into the actual effects of AI, quote, raises an uncomfortable prospect that this supposedly revolutionary technology might never deliver on its promise of broad economic transformation, but instead just concentrate more wealth at the top. Indeed, Sam Altman has touted the benefits of OpenAI's work as moving us ever closer to the promised land, also known as artificial general intelligence, or AGI, meaning autonomous AI that has reached or surpassed levels of human intelligence. Altman claims the arrival of AGI would bring, quote, massive prosperity. But according to the article in The Atlantic, quote, AGI is largely rhetorical, a fantastical, all-purpose excuse.
It's not something that's what that Chris Norland video was talking about, what Chris Norland was saying, like they never follow through on these promises. The reality of AI is that AI is going to make people's lives that are already really good even better. Or, you know, depending on how you look at it, probably worse, because they're going to become less human. They're going to become more immoral. They're going to have more access to things, which means that they're going to lose that feeling you get when you accomplish things. That's what's going to happen. There's this idea, there's certain places where I do agree, but there's this idea that AI is going to become superhuman in this intelligence where it's going to think of things that human beings never could, right? But the problem with that is that it's trained off of humans. Therefore, it's starting from the idea of thinking like a human. Therefore, it is going to most likely just think about things like a really intelligent human. So things like vaccines, for instance, right? An AI will be really good at creating vaccines. One of the problems with vaccines is that though it is a very, 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 very small percentage of people, some people do have poor reactions to vaccines. Once again, as I said before, denying that something happens is not the way to go through your argument. You accept that something happens, and then you explain why it's still incredibly important to take vaccines. So what would be great about AI is that AI could take your human genome, your DNA, and it can look and it can see, oh, this specific vaccination for measles, let's say, actually could harm this person because they have this genetic issue, right? Or they have this deficiency. And then it could take that vaccine and it can manipulate it to make it more specific to you. So that's something that's like well beyond our understanding right now. It could find cures for cancer. It could find better, more available medicines. Like a lot of our pain medicines, a lot of our medicines, period, come from the rainforest and from our research into the rainforest, which is something that we are every day getting rid of more and more of the rainforest, which means one day we probably won't have that go-to to find. So we will need something like AI to say, well, you know what is very close to the genetic makeup of this thing that makes this painkiller? This other thing. And if you combine it with this thing, then you have the same results. So AI has this real ability to do these really amazing things for society, but it should never be over exaggerated to make people feel like it's going to be this like omnipotent being that's capable of thinking of, like it's not going to tell you where there's life in the universe, right? It might be able to tell you where statistically it's the most probable, but it knows what we know. And so it's just they're overselling the promise of this. Most likely what AI will be used for is to manipulate things like the stock market to continue to make huge profits for people that are already making huge profits. As I've said before about the stock market, do I play in the stock market? Do I make some money out of the stock market? Yeah, on occasion. Am I wealthy? By no means am I wealthy. But making $500 here and there feels really big to me because I don't have a ton of money. But I'm not going to be the person that has access to this AI. So what's that going to do? It's going to, once again, put one more hurdle, one more obstacle between me and just creating enough money to have a retirement at one point. And it's going to add just one more benefit to being born ultra wealthy and to continue the cycle of keeping people poor whilst keeping the rich so far above them that they don't have to smell them. Like that's the overselling of what this is. And I'm glad she brought that up. And I like that Chris Norland brought that up as well.
For OpenAI to continue pushing for ever more wealth and power. Under the guise of a civilizing mission, the empire of AI is accelerating its global expansion
Most people
and
that are rich
entrenching
don't play
its
it either.
power.
They have somebody
So
play
it's
it
no
for
wonder
them.
why Sam
Squish.
Altman and OpenAI are associated with Elon Musk,
They have
who's
enough money to
associated
pay
with
people to make
Peter
the
Thiel,
money.
who's associated with JD Vance, who all at various points tout the teachings and philosophy of Curtis Yarvin and other proponents of dark enlightenment, neo-reactionism, and accelerationism. AI offers the ultimate example of potential progress at the expense of individuals who happen to get in the way of that progress. So what if you're a worker in Kenya earning a pitiful wage to become deeply traumatized while filtering out violence and hate speech from OpenAI's technologies? So what if
And that's another good point, because you know what's going to happen is it's going to happen places that aren't America first, right? It's going to happen in these other countries where like Americans don't give two shits about or just aren't at all educated.
I love the poorly educated.
Right? Like they're always going to start somewhere where you can't see, where they've created enough hate and anger against that populace that if you do find out about it, that you won't care. So people in Vietnam are going to lose their jobs before people in America. People in Cambodia are going to lose their jobs before people in America. Because if they can hide it long enough to fine tune it before they bring it in to displace you, that's all the better for them.
If you're an artist or journalist getting phased out by the AI that is using your very art or words to spew out art or articles faster than any human could? So what if you live in a contaminated area or a region regularly devastated by increasing natural disasters because of the climate change being hastened by the further development of AI? All of it is worth it in the end, in the name of progress. And anyway, it doesn't really matter because the ultimate height of human achievement and technological progress is colonizing Mars, where we can escape from the disasters that AI has brought about.
We have
and by
homesickness.
we, I mean a
We
select
wanna
few
go back.
billionaires, but again, it's all in the name of progress, and that's all that matters. And while all of this is very new and spurred on by technologies the world has never seen before, it is also in some ways a tale as old as time. So long as your philosophy posits you as preternaturally ordained for greatness, as a genius among men, you're absolved from contending with the humanity of the people your actions are hurting. You can point to a higher purpose while stamping out the life around you. That is not new. And when you understand this background, the rise of these uniquely 21st century ideologies like dark enlightenment, neo-reactionism, accelerationism, and the men like Curtis Yarvin who have garnered fame from developing them, or like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and JD Vance who have gained power and fortune from adhering to them, or like Trump, who's definitely too stupid to understand any of this.
Once again, I want to make that completely clear to everybody. Everybody gives Trump too much credit in this scheme. He's just a pansy. He's just a distraction. He's just some fool that got paid a bunch of money to sell out America. That's what the fuck Trump was.
But delighted to act as a dummy figurehead to wave at the crowds and sign the decrees, you then are better able to understand why the disparate groups of people behind Project 2025 and who are pulling the strings in the White House now are able to pull this all off despite the apparent chaos it's causing, despite their apparent disagreements. They are all in some way united behind a greater purpose wherein their greed, bigotry, and sociopathic inability to feel empathy is all justified, where the world order that puts them,
empathy.
white Christian men, and the women who are willing to birth their babies at the very top is reestablished, and where the pain that their ideologies cause, whether through higher prices because of tariffs, or deporting toddlers, or keeping a legally dead woman on life support to act as a flesh receptacle for her 9-week-old fetus despite her family's wishes, that can all be justified as necessary to their ultimate goal of progress. And I think all of us collectively recognizing this and calling it out for what it is an important first step. It can be easy to fall into cynicism when faced with such a large, deeply entrenched and very scary ideology, so I'm trying not to do that by, at the very least, just shedding more light on these things. I also think it's an important lesson for those of us who wish to counteract this incredibly cynical force that has taken over our government. You have to know your enemy, but we also have to be driven by something bigger than us, something that is genuinely deeply meaningful, something that will align us across differences of opinion and background in an effort towards that deeply meaningful goal. And I'm not sure what that is, but I refuse to let right-wing cynicism infect my belief that there's got to be something positive we can all get behind for the benefit of each other and humanity generally. If you want to support my work, all my videos are completely ad-free and uncensored over on Patreon, patreon.com/Leeja Miller. Thank you to my multi-platinum Patreon.
Yeah, and you guys should. Leeja's dope, man. I really love Leeja. She's so dope. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, and check out that video on the screen now.